Welcome to r/malicious compliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. Thank you friends for subscribing to the channel, and for so many likes. The first story. My major informed me that I must do my job carefully. The second story. I started arriving early and sat at my desk with my computer screen closed until exactly 8 a.m. because the manager scolded me for not following my work schedule. The third story. Didn't want to dirty my nice uniforms on the rifle range. Wore old ones instead. And the first story is, years ago, late 80s, I was a VIP guard at Air Force Base Waterkloof in Pretoria, South Africa. This was a very busy AFB, and it was there where 21 Squadron was based. 21 Squadron was solely for VIP transport, generals and ministers, etc. Sorta like a lower budget Air Force One. As such, there was a special gate for entrance and exit from the AFB, that was for use only for VIPs. The normal entry and exit gates were congested during the day due to the number of vehicles and people entering and exiting. Every vehicle had to be identified and searched. The typical mirrors on handles to look under the vehicles, etc. This made entry take a long time, so you'd better be early in order to be on time. When we were expecting VIPs, we, the VIP guards, would man the VIP gate to make entry for them easier, and also offer protection while they were on the base. Now there was a total D-bag colonel, not a VIP, who'd use our gate for entry to the base because it took too long through the main gate. I was not allowed to allow non-VIPs through the gate, but he always used his rank to bully us to let him through. One morning we let him through, and just as he entered, a VIP 7 Series limo arrived at the gate. It was a general. The general asked who it was in the AF issue VW Jetta that just went through the gate. I informed him it was Colonel X. The general said nothing further, and the 7 Series rolled through. After we stood down, the VIPs had departed via 21 Squadron. I got a radio message to see the head of security, my major. I entered my major's office and stood at attention. The major had to reprimand me for allowing a non-VIP through the gate. I explained that it was a colonel, and that there was nothing I could do after checking his ID to ensure he was a colonel, and had to let him through. My major informed me that I had more tools at my disposal, and that I should do my job thoroughly, and excused me. About an hour later, still peeved off that I'd been chewed out because of this colonel, I suddenly realized that my major was spot on the money. It was a couple of days later when we next manned the VIP gate. The colonel drives up in his Jetta. I march out to the driver's door, salute, and ask for ID. The colonel is peeved but shows his ID. I ask him to step out of the car. He asks why, and I tell him it's my job. He does so. I request he stand a few meters away on the sidewalk. He does so. I then get the mirror for looking under the vehicle, and then go ever so slowly around the vehicle, looking in every nook and cranny, like we do during normal checkpoints. Then I open the driver's door and look through everything I can find on the driver's side, including spending a couple of minutes checking under the driver's seat and pulling the floor mats out. I do the same for the passenger door, the glove box, etc. Then it's the turn of the back seats. I check them thoroughly as well. I then open the hood and check to make sure there's no contraband or explosives, etc. under the hood. Then I go to the boot and trunk. I remove the carpet to check the spare wheel. I remove the spare wheel and the jack and tools, etc. I search the car to the best of my knowledge. It took about 25 minutes. All the while the colonel is staring daggers at me. I then carefully put everything back, including spare wheel, jack, tools, all the floor carpets, etc. Another 8 or so minutes wasted. Then I give the all clear to my guards at the gate. You may open the gate and allow the colonel to enter. He got in the car and drove through the gate. He never returned to the VIP again in the remaining 6 months I was stationed there. F you, Colonel K. Incredible way to handle a tough situation. Well done, OP. Reminds me of a guy I was in class with where he was lucky enough to become a boom jockey overnight. So at 6:30 all kinds of people start coming in, including supervisors. He asked for his ID card, and the supervisor didn't have one, because the base commander said I need to see your ID card, sir. Don't think of it as me confirming your ID. Think of it as if you were taking orders from the base commander. All men are required to show identification upon request. So this supervisor turned around and drove home at a fast speed, being pulled over by police officers for speeding and getting a ticket. Same thing on the way back, from the same traffic cop. Then he pulled up to the gate, showed his ID, and they let him through. The second story is, you're hourly. Your day starts at 8 and ends at 5. So I used to work for a large team with like 25 staffers, 6 supervisors, a manager, and a director. The manager was a blonde woman in her mid-30s, whose only discernible qualification was being an attractive blonde woman in her mid-30s. She was like Regina George, except she signed your paycheck, so we put up with it. The team was going through a transition from having old-timers retire and hiring new staff, so for the first year and a half, I don't think we ever left on time. OT was pretty much a given. But towards the end of our second year, my buddy and I, we started the same day, noticed things are slowing down. We're catching up on the workloads and people are starting to leave on time. One day we finish all of our work, help out a few other teammates finish their work, and get pulled into an office with the director to get some praise and recognition. On cloud 9, we get back to our desks, pack up and leave a few minutes early, feeling good about a solid day's work. We got written up. The next day we got chewed out by the manager. She reminded us of our start and end time. You're hourly and your shift starts at 8 and ends at 9. You can't leave early just because you feel like it. We received a lengthy diatribe about being a team player and staying until the work is done. Blah blah blah. It was unfortunate timing, because the reason the director had pulled us into a meeting the day before was to congratulate us on our hard work. It turns out that management had done some metrics testing and figured out that 2 people on the team of 25 individual contributors were doing about 12% of the total work done each, so the 2 of us were doing a quarter of the work of the entire team. Our manager had not yet been privy to that knowledge. Armed with the knowledge that everyone was liking their work to the last full day, we decided that for the next month we would both work at the pace of everyone else. But we would be at our desks at 8 and wouldn't leave till 5. Most days we were done about an hour early, and then twiddled our thumbs looking at blank screens from about 4:30 till 5. We even stayed a few minutes past 5. About 3 weeks in, our manager even effing commends us on our hard work. Haha. About 2 weeks later, that month's metrics results came in and numbers were down. Turns out we were now doing about the same as everyone else, and the team was not hitting its figures. Our manager had to have known what we were doing, but what she was going to say, they aren't picking up everyone else's slack anymore. So she tries to F us over another way. I was a few minutes late one day. She effing wrote me up. Mind you, some of her supervisors would show up late on a daily basis, but I'm an Edmond Dantes kind of guy. I'm cool with that long-haul revenge. I started to show up early and would sit at my desk with the computer screen still locked until exactly 8 a.m. And this went on for about a week before the director had had enough and came up to my desk and asked me what the F I was doing. I explained that my manager wrote me up for leaving a few minutes earlier and wrote me up for being a few minutes late, so I'm just making sure I'm never late, as she explained to me that I'm hourly and my shift starts at 8. I don't know if he thought the offices were soundproof or just didn't care, but the reaming he gave her was like listening to Beethoven's Ninth played by the Vienna Philharmonic. Edit. The team was 25 people. Each person does 4% of the work, and everyone is good. Here I am doing the job of 3 people, and getting it done without ever complaining. Like, what in their right mind makes them say, I'm gonna ignore this person watching Netflix, and those people gossiping all day, and go after the people carrying the team on their back? That'll probably make them work harder. Under her, I was never promoted in the 3 years it took to escape. Since then, I've been promoted twice in 2 years. The empty gun is me being on the management meeting with her, because I'm at her level, and 5 years later, she's still at the same level. Managers who have enough time and energy to berate employees for such trivialities clearly lack their own work. I would recommend eliminating their position to the powers that be. Imagine the wages saved. Imagine the increased productivity. That's what I did at my last job. I had to arrive at 8 and would show up every day at 7:45 and wait to arrive. The manager got sick of me just sitting there, so I stayed in my car for 14 minutes and signed in. The rooms were not open and ready for patients. My doctor that I worked for was there and wasn't happy that I wasn't there, etc., etc., etc. She was the worst manager. She had no clinical skills at all, and she also took the job of clinical manager and got fired. Now I love my new job. My supervisors recognize that I do about 200 to 300% of my coworkers' work. I got a $2 raise in my first 7 months, and most of the rules no longer apply to me. No one swears if I take a few extra minutes for a break. If I go outside for a 30-second pop, no one blinks an eye. Good managers drive what you do. Bad managers determine what time you come and go. The last story is, have to buy my own uniforms? Fine. I'll only wear them when I absolutely have to. This story is from a good 15 plus years ago when I was a much more fit Marine. Here's some background to set the stage. I graduated high school in 2001 and decided the best way to pay for college and get the F away from my family was to go to the military. Being young and dumb, I decided that if I was going to do it, I might as well do it right, so I joined the Marines. Well, I started the boot camp in August of 2001. 9/11 happened about a month after I got there. My time in was filled with a bunch of stupid stories about people trying to flex their rank on us lowly junior enlisted folks. I'm sure I have a bunch of other MC, but the one below stuck with me. On to the MC. In boot camp, we were issued I think 4 or 5 sets of camouflage uniforms. After that, we had a measly 100 or so a year for a uniform stipend. Well, 1 or 2 years into my enlistment, the Marines decided to go high speed with new digital print camo and suede leather boots. I think the first set of green and desert were provided, but we were expected to pay for anything else out of our stipend. Those things aren't exactly cheap. I enjoyed the new uniforms much more than the old style because they didn't require ironing, and we no longer had to polish our boots, but I was also more concerned with getting them stained and dirty. Every year we had to do rifle qualification. The range was pretty nasty sometimes, and you would often have to perform your prone shooting in nice mud puddles. I would always pull out my old camis and iron them, and polish my old jungle boots each year before going to the range. Not a big deal for the first few years. The last range qualification of my 5-year contract was about 3 months before the old uniforms were to be retired, and about 2 months before I was going to be a civilian. I had no more Fs to give at that point. I showed up the first day to the range, and I was literally the only one out of several hundred Marines in old school green camo. Nearly immediately, well, we get there at like 4 a.m., so probably 6 a.m. or so. I got chewed out by some first sergeant for not being in proper uniform. I explained to him that these were my issued camis at boot camp, that I only had a couple of pair of digitals, so I didn't want to dirty them on the range. At first, he accused me of buying them, and honestly thought there was no way that I was issued them. He wasn't persuaded by my explanation, and I was told that I better show up in proper attire the next day. As soon as I got home, I pulled up the base regulations, including the recent guidance from the base commander, outlining the last date that we could wear old camis. I printed off a copy and put it in my pocket, and I went to the range the next day, still wearing my old camis. Again, he comes over to me and makes me stand in parade rest, and all that while he berates me for not following his orders. I pulled out the base regulations, and stated the base commander says that this is a proper attire for another few months. He tried to bring up some reason why everyone having the same uniform is required on the range, and that the range wasn't under the jurisdiction of the base commander. It was. He ended up asking for my superior's info, and called my staff sergeant. I thought I was going to have to cave in, but my staff sergeant actually had my back, and thought it was kinda funny. So for the rest of the week I remained the only Marine on the rifle range in non-digital camo. It was nice to stick it to the man one last time before leaving. They also made us change from desert to woodland camis every so often, so you realistically needed 2 to 3 full sets of each color. That's assuming you don't have a physically demanding job, and we can wear the pants 2 to 3 days in a row without washing. I love digital models as much as you can love camis, but in boot camp they gave me the old style. The recruits got new ones a week after I arrived. I was peeved. Anyway, carry over to the graduation date, and I'll say to hell with it, and squeeze out my old ones that I hung up to wear one more time before they retired. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.